So I wanted to just get my thoughts out on railroading. I've got a couple videos coming up that I want to work on for railroading, but I just I needed a spot to kind of brainstorm and just think about what is railroading and why it's a bad thing in Dungeons and Dragons, right? So on that topic, that's a great question to start. What is railroading? I mean, to me, where railroading begins is the moment that, as a dungeon master, you take away somebody's choices, right? You remove their agency from the situation. Okay, so removing said agency is going to do a variety of things, right? It's going to do one thing for you, which is good for you, bad for others. It's going to put the players, it's going to keep the players in the direction that you want them to go, right? The bad thing that it's going to do is removing said choice from your players is going to make them feel like their actions don't actually matter. That it doesn't matter if they want to go explore somewhere. And there's various, I think there's various levels to this as well, right? There's a level that I've seen which I would call, for the sake of right now, let's call it puppy guarding, where a player will be walking somewhere. They're walking towards the boundaries of what the DM has prepared, let's say, right? If you've played Battlefield, let's say that red screen goes up and you see the countdown timer 10, 9, 8, and it says, hey, you got to get back in bounds or you're going to die, or, something's going to happen. And so I've seen DMs do a lot of this puppy guarding in a sense where as you're moving out of bounds, if you will, the DMs are constantly saying, "Whoa, hey!" They're giving you warnings, right? Oh, you feel like you really shouldn't go this way. You don't think that this is a very good idea, or you don't find anything over here in this corner. Whatever it may be. You're just flatlining, and just giving them players dead end after dead end, trying to get them to stop barrier after barrier, trying to get them to stop and go back into bounds, so that way they don't escape the matrix. They don't they don't break your game because you don't have anything prepared for what lies outside of those boundaries, right? So there's puppy guarding, which isn't necessarily, you're not taking away that player's choice, but you're making it very difficult for them to make whatever choice that they want to, right? And so I don't know that I'll call it puppy guarding for now, I guess, and I guess it fits kind of under this umbrella of railroading. Okay, so that's one of them. Puppy guarding, quite a bit. I see that often happening, but still better, I think, than actual full-blown railroading, where again, you are taking away player choices. Another one is that's coming to mind right now is what do we call this? Let's give this a term. So let me describe it first, and we could try to give it a term. So you have a player who's, well, you as the DM are making choices for the player. You say, Farland, you get up and you walk over to the bar, right? Now, not to be confused with narrating after they said, well, I want to go to the bar. You can narrate that piece, right? Okay, you get up, you go to the bar. But if someone's sitting down, let's say they're all in a tavern and you need something to happen, you need them to talk to the bartender, and they're not, Railroading would be telling the player, Farland, let's say is his name, for example, you get up and you go to the bar and start to talk with the bartender, right? Let's call that manning or driving. Let's call it driving. Driving the players, where you, as the DM, are now puppeteering. That might be even a better word for it, right? Where you're puppeting. You've already got all of these other pieces of the game, and you're puppeting these players exactly where you need them to go, and doing exactly what you want them to do, right? Because you have to progress your story forward, right? Why is that bad? Well, obviously, as we talked about before, with puppy guarding, puppeteering, puppy guarding. I've just realized that's kind of a little funny. We'll see if we can keep that going. Okay, but you've got puppeteering. Okay, well, sorry, you got puppy guarding, where you are diminishing the player's choices and making them feel like they don't matter. In puppeteering, you are just completely removing any ability for them to choose whatsoever. And so to say that their choices only matter, does that make sense? I guess because you are using them to accomplish your own purposes as a DM. So their choices only ever matter, and they don't feel. It feels autonomous, right? They don't feel like they have any control whatsoever over their player. And at that point, as a player, you're thinking, okay, we're all sitting around the table, or I'm sitting here watching the DM play this character. I'm not actually playing this character. They are for me. And basically, at that point, we're all just watching the DM read a novel, if you like Matt Colville will say, right? At that point, it's just a novel, and we're all just sitting around listening to the DM tell a story, right? That's about it. It's about as far as it goes. Okay. Now let's see. Are there any other pieces that come to mind? No, I don't think so. I don't. At least not in my head currently. There's not completely taking the choice away, and then there is completely taking the choice away. I'm sure I'll think of one as I keep going. But so that's to me, that's what railroading is. You are removing agency and / or diminishing the importance of choice from your players. And I just want to talk about that too. Player choice is so vitally important to your game. If you think about this story, it's not your story as a DM. It's not their story either. It's everybody's story, right? So that is something you have to remember. There's a lot of things that will spawn at your table by allowing chaos to ensue, right? So if let's paint this picture real quick. This is how I kind of view being a dungeon master in general. You have this sense of order that you've set up. That is everything that you have prepared. You know what to do if stuff happens within those boundaries. You know how to react. You've got your players set up. You've got NPCs set up, maybe. And maybe you're one of the DMs that really doesn't prep a lot of that stuff out and can do so on the fly. Your circle of order, whatever it may be bigger, maybe smaller. It just kind of depends on your prep as a DM. I would say mine is generally smaller. I don't struggle so much with with improv. Thankfully, it's a great skill to have. I got lucky, and I've been able to develop it further and further and get better at it. But I have luckily been pretty decent at it to begin with. But that being said, you have this circle of order, and again, it can be as big or as small as you're comfortable with. But at some point, the players are going to get out of that said circle. Now, this is a very complex problem, right? You may have some players that are just trying to put you through hell, and they are just dodging every possible thing that you present, and sometimes they do it maliciously, right? And that's a conversation to be had outside of the table, to talk with your players and say, hey, I noticed that you don't seem to want to do anything that I prepare. Am I missing something? Is this that's a conversation to have outside. That's another video for this. So, but the point is that you are going to have players that get outside of this order, this circle of order, and that outside of the circle of order is chaos, right? You don't know what is going to happen outside of that circle of order, and you may be more or less comfortable with that depending on how big your circle of order is, right? Now, when those players get out of that circle of order, some interesting things can happen, okay? You can think of this a lot, at least this is how it appears in my head. It's kind of like jazz. Now, I'm not even a big fan of jazz, but I do find it fascinating that there's a pace that one person's playing, and then other people start to join in and add their little bits and pieces. Same thing. So there's like a lead guy, which is you, the DM. You're driving the story. You're presenting options to drive the story forward. Now, you can't play the whole song by yourself. At least you can, but it's going to be boring, right? For everybody listening and for the guys up on stage who are waiting to play their turn too. Very boring. Okay, so now you're playing your tune, and what's interesting is you might have, your circle of order might be a couple different sequences of chords, let's say, that you're playing. Okay, but now as other players, all these other instruments come and join you, they're playing their each unique pieces, right? And then this song forms, okay? This flow, if you will. And sometimes when these jazz players can really get into this flow, the music, some of the best things can happen out of there, right? Because as you enter more into this chaos, you don't really know who's going where in this jazz performance. And this can be good and bad, right? A lot of times maybe the jazz does not do as well, and sometimes it's really good, right? It can be a great performance as they attempt to conquer the chaos, not knowing, they're outside of this order. New things can be discovered and better things can be discovered, right? And so this idea that as your players get outside of this realm of chaos, you have the potential to create an even better story, to have an even better experience, to allow your players to have an even better time at the table, right? If I look back at most of the memorable times of all of my campaigns, it is when I've lost my. It's mostly when I have been pushed outside of that circle of order, and so because of that, I've had to just respond to players' actions. I've had to start improvising, and sometimes characters spawn out of chaos for just I just sometimes it just comes and I say something and things roll along really well. And so I guess what I'm saying is we need to try as DMs to be able to get a little comfortable with exploring chaos, right? We need to be able to. Now, chaos isn't good all the time either, because if your players, if you open up to your players and you say, "All right, guys, just do whatever you want to do. Like, what do you want to do? Let's do it today," right? There's not a lot that goes well unless you've got really instigative players and they have their own ambitions and their own storylines that they're pursuing. At that point, they're practically, you know, I could argue that they're DMing almost at that point and playing potentially. I don't know. I haven't really thought about that enough. And maybe we'll table that and we'll come back to that in a second. But the point is that your players need some level of order, some level of structure, but not too much. If it's too much, the players feel like, right, that their choices don't matter and that they're just watching you unfold this story out in front of them. And so okay, so you explore chaos because it can help improve your game. Going back to, the story thing. As players, as you allow other players, the players at your table, to be a part of the story and to help write you a story. I've always envisioned D&D as this collaborative writing process where I can, as a DM, can kind of come up with structure and create this small circle of order. You have a basis of the story. You have some hooks, some plot hooks, some quest hooks for the players to explore, and then you let the players go after them, right? And they fill in all of these holes along the way with their goofy characters and with their goofy interactions and different things like that. You can never anticipate everything that a player is going to do, and because of that, it creates a unique experience, which is Dungeons and Dragons. There are no boundaries, which is so, beautiful in a sense that your players are able to do anything, and there is no, invisible wall to stop them. And that's such a beautiful experience to be able to collaboratively tell a story together because everybody feels like they're a part of it and have contributed a piece to said story. And yeah, it's such a beautiful thing that is Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, so let's go back. Let's think a little bit about what we were talking about before, right? So if you don't have enough order, if you don't give the players any maps to look at, you don't give the player really any direction, there's no quests, there's no nothing. The players are meant to just get out and get going. In my experience, it doesn't work well. A map allows players to see something that they want to explore. Oh, the deep black forest sounds cool. Let's go there, right? this volcano, why is this marked on the map? Why is there a waypoint here? Maybe we should go check it out, kind of a thing, right? Let's go see what's over in the Twisted Tavern of the north of town. There's just, as soon as you put a waypoint on a map, whether the players are going to go there or not, them reading that, them seeing that really can draw what does it do? It calls to them, in a sense. It sparks imagination. They begin to wonder what that is. They begin to wonder what it could be, and their mind begins to try to conquer said chaos. There's this small piece of order, small circle of order that is maybe just the name of said town, and their mind immediately wants to know what's in this town. It tries to fill in all these blanks, right? What's in the town? What are the type of people there? What kind of quests are going to be there? What kind of money is there to be made there? The list goes on and on. But again, even just small plots of these circles of order, that I'll just keep calling them, can really really help the game quite a bit. Getting away from railroading quite a bit. So let me go back to railroading. So a good question would be then, right, if I can't puppy guard and I can't puppeteer, where does my line get drawn as a DM, right? Because you're telling me that I need to be able to, compel players to do things, but I can't tell them to do it, and I can't shove them in that direction. And I would say, correct. You, as a dungeon master, this is how I kind of have to think about it, and this is how I've always played it, at least, is that as a dungeon master, you could think of yourself as the conscience of a player. Maybe. Let's explore it. But I think that you can think of yourself as a conscience in this sense, okay? Just as your conscience does in real life. So let's say the player is about to make a choice, right? Your conscience might say, or you might get that gut feeling, this is not a good idea, right? I've played that before, where I've had a player who was dueling an old enemy of his much later in life, and he defeats him, and he has the chance to kill him. And all I did was add this small piece of this feeling, right? You feel that that's not the right thing to do, right? Now, regardless of me, that was poorly put. So he had an amulet that was connected to his mother, who had passed away, and when he was about to off said person, or off with his head, I should even say, the amulet began to kind of vibrate or get warm, in a sense. And that was it. That was super subtle. That was all I did. I just had it get warm. And he thought, okay, Mom's trying to tell me something at this exact moment. Mom always wanted me to be the best I could be. And he ended up, this created this moral dilemma for him. And he ended up not deciding to kill said person. He didn't take off the person's head. And so there's a little tidbits. Obviously, you can't, make a player feel something, but you can introduce emotions to players, right? And this is where it gets a little. This is a little bit of a gray area, and that's why I said we've got to be careful with the conscience thing. But the conscience can, right, sort of lead you. You can tell a player that something happens, and you feel a certain way, or when you're walking through, you have this eerie sense that something completely horrible and evil has happened here, right? Or you hear a scream in the distance and your heart sinks, right? You can describe these things to your players and give them a sense of depth, right? And they should know that they'll know, okay, whoa, like that was an impactful piece. But again, you can't necessarily tell a play, like you can't, I don't know. You feel like going. That's a difficult one because that's a little bit of gray area for me. Because depending on like an insight check or things like that, you may be able to give a little more, take a little more, be a little more clear of a conscience, right? You get the sense that this person is lying to you, right? You get that sense when you talk with people, or if you go on a date or whatever it might be. You kind of get this feeling of like, oh, like boom, like this is, I don't know, I could trust this person, or there's something off about this person, or whatever it might be. You do get those short, sheer feelings, and that gut feeling. And as a DM, yes, you are. I would say that is within your realm. Okay, you can do that. Emotions, I already talked about that. I think that works as well. I thought I had another example that came to mind, but I'm blanking on it right now. The point being, you can sort of very subtly nudge players to do things, but overall, it's their choice to do things, right? So that's the player's conscience. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. What are some? And okay, so then, if you are said player's conscience, and you're also an external force that can, briefly affect your players, such as you get a quick sense of fear, or your skin. You get goosebumps on your skin as you walk through, like your hair stands up as you walk through the door of a tomb, and things like that. Like that's okay. That's in your realm. The narrating part is okay there. So let's talk about this last couple things, and then I don't think I have anything else on my mind at this point. But how do we combat it then? How do we avoid railroading? Okay, let's just take the two pieces that we had. So puppeteering. Unfortunately, with puppeteering, as the player is heading out, right, you know what? I think that this fits for both of them. So I would say stop railroading and start filtering. Okay, so filtering meaning, if you could think of funneling. Let's start funneling is what I actually wanted to say. So if you think of a funnel, right, it's got this wide end and it shrinks down into a small end, and ideally that's how your games should kind of go, right? If you, and you can look this all up, but I generally try to have a like beginning, middle, and end of my adventures / campaigns. And so everything that the players are doing is sort of funneling into the middle piece, right? And then everything they do in the middle piece is sort of funneling into the end piece, and then the end piece funnels all the way into a big climax, a big conclusion, right? Now, how do we do that? Much easier said than done, obviously. But what you can do is you can restrict the number. No, how do we say this? You can always change where something is headed. You don't have to do it immediately, right? So as someone's walking out of bounds, you don't have to have said person who's walking out of bounds get stopped by the invisible wall and say, no, go this way, right? Turn around. You've got the the wrong way, turn around. The camera guy, or is it the camera guy? The little dude in the cloud with the fishing pole or whatever in Mario Kart, right? Turn around. You're going the wrong way if you're driving backwards. I would always drive backwards to smash into people when I got bored, so it's fun. All right, off topic, back on topic. So let's say, okay, let's take that exact same thing. This player's trying to walk out of bounds and do something. Let's say he is going to the next town over instead of following the main quest where he was going to go. Well, there's so many ways that you could always take whatever the player's doing and eventually loop it back in, right? It may take a side quest or two to get it looped back around, but it's totally possible, right? So you can always draw some connection between where they currently are and where you need them to get going, okay? And you could draw them in by, again, assuming you don't have these malicious players who are always trying to ruin your campaign, which at that point, again, another conversation outside of the table. But let's say that, they head off to this town. Well, let's say that, a bunch of bandits show up and they are attacking this town, and you eradicate them, and then the townspeople are like, oh, we get this all the time. Like, we just really need someone to just go send them a message. So you just like, yeah, like, I feel good about this. Let's go take them on. And so as you head to the bandit camp and take them on, and you send them the message, and you either kill them all or you pound them into the dust and tell them to stop. Well, maybe you find out that their leader was taking bribes from the actual big bad guy, who now you've got a whole nother connection. Or it doesn't even have to be that obvious. Like, let's back up a couple steps. They're taking bribes from the connection that's over in the town where they were supposed to go before, right? You can draw these connections, but either way, you can funnel people in to places. Now, don't make it too obvious. It doesn't have to be that exact town. Maybe you take whatever you had, whatever your circle of order is for that town, and you just move it to a different town too, right? The point being that things do not have to unfold the way that you have specifically imagined them. When you prep and you create that circle of order, you need to make sure that things are abstract enough that you can take these puzzle pieces, well, I don't even like to think of them as puzzle pieces, because puzzle pieces only have one place to go. In fact, that's probably a good analogy to avoid. Don't make a puzzle the entire time. Like, your story shouldn't look like a puzzle, in a sense, right? There shouldn't be only certain spots that every little thing can fit, because you're going to be sorely disappointed as a DM, and your players are going to feel also sorely disappointed because they're not going to put the puzzle together correctly. It's just not going to happen. I'm sorry. And so yeah, so you can always draw these connections wherever you need it to go, right? And so just roll. You got to roll with it. If they go into another town and, all this stuff's happening, like you can totally go with it. You've seen enough movies to know what to do. Just pick something up, piece it together. Um, Heck, you could even plug into ChatGPT real quick and just say, "Hey, what's a quick adventure for a D&D group heading into a city?" I don't care. It doesn't really matter. The players need something to do, so and you'll be okay. You've got enough material. In fact, sometimes you may need to just use something that you've been thinking about putting in the future. Use it right then and there, right? You're always going to have better and better ideas. It will come. It will happen. It's your execution that really is what's key, right? And if you're excited about an idea that you're holding on to preciously because maybe, it doesn't quite fit in said puzzle piece, then you're going to be disappointed. Your players aren't going to have as much fun as they wanted, because when that idea is there, it's alive and it's calling to you, obviously, because you're excited about it, right? So don't hold back, I guess, is what I could say. Haven't been much help on how to avoid uh avoid and I don't really have I don't have that much advice on, other than just telling you don't do it, right? If your player's heading out of bounds, just let them go. Let them go to where they need to go and give them stuff. Keep them fed, whatever they're looking for, right? And again, you've watched enough D&D from other people. You've played enough D&D from other people. You have read enough books. You've watched enough movies. You know what to do. You can easily take one of those items, twist it just a little bit, take one piece out of it. Heck, you could probably just play it straight off the bat, and it makes your world feel alive. It makes it feel like players can make choices. And drawing those connections helps players feel like even when they're off doing something that they wanted to do, it can still affect the overall campaign. That their choices, even when they're not what you have prepared, still matter. Okay? I don't. With filtering, this is just coming to mind real quick again. So with filtering, you can reduce, you reduce the options that you give players, right? Again, with this, if you don't give enough options, players are more likely to be chaotic or more likely to just, I guess they're either going to be very chaotic and they just go anywhere, right? Or they're going to be static and they're not going to move at all. And you're going to be stuck with bored players. Or you're going to be stuck with unsatisfied players because you can't keep up with that much chaos. And so, ideally, you have something prepared. You have a location where you want your players to get to, or a certain percent of progress that you need them to be at before they, you have this point in your mind in the future where you need them to be. Now, how they get there is, they're going to be taking these turns, but what you're doing is you're going to be redirecting those decisions. So, and again, redirecting in the way that you can give them hooks, plot hooks, quest hooks that lead them back to where you need them to be, that bring them back to said main quest, said order or circle of order, and then they're back in your realm again, right? And the best part about this, that whole piece, is that they don't know it's happening, because they don't know what's coming out, right? Their circle of order is them as the character. It's their play. And you are the chaos for them, right? They don't know what you have prepped. They don't know what's coming out of your mouth. They don't know what kind of improv you're doing. A lot of times they don't know if you're improving or if you had it all prepared to begin with. If you're confident enough to just roll with it, right? And so I would say, just to finalize my thoughts on this, allow your players to do whatever they want, but make sure, for the sake of yourself, that you are funneling those decisions into progress towards the next piece of your campaign. Okay? Don't restrict what players can do. Don't tell players what they are doing, but restrict, lower, maybe is a better word, lower the number of options that you present them in a strategic way to get them to do the things that you need them to do. Or, and let me just tell you, I guess another thing that came to mind was, you can structure your campaign in a way that will aid you in this, right? I structured a campaign. It was fairly similar to Far Cry, if you ever played the Far Cries. There's certain campaign waypoints, right? But they also have these outposts where you can go fight the bad guys and different things like that. But the whole campaign, at least the beginning and middle piece to the campaign, was based on, hey, we need to go fight this big giant army. We don't have enough guys. So our job is to either, one, we got to take out the bad guys. So we go to these outposts and eliminate the bad guys from them. And that would technically weaken the, right? These are all decisions being made in the beginning that's going to affect the middle piece, right? And so these decisions that are being made matter, okay? So they're taking out those people, or they're going into the cities and they're going to these kind of quest waypoints, and they are gaining followers, right? They're building up their own army. Okay, so all of these things are so they're in a way they're incentivized to play into the main plot, as well as, you know, they everything, like I said, it was all set up to filter them into that piece, because they know a war is coming at some point. And so the whole thing is just a prep phase. They're trying to get all of those things done so that they can direct themselves in that thing. And so then middle piece, like, that's where most of the meat comes. Let's say that they're done, they finish, or whatever, the war happens. Whether they win or lose, right, it's just going to affect their next piece in towards, like, the ending, right, the final part, the beginning, middle, end. The end piece, the whole thing may have changed, right? So now, I mean, at least this is what happened in my campaign. The middle piece hit. The war was, let's say lost. Like the players lost. They didn't completely do what they needed to do. At least so they thought, right? But then it changed to a whole nother piece of like, okay, well, we need to, a whole nother piece of the campaign began. And because of the connections that were made, I was able to create more quests for them to go and now, seek after these like legendary items to aid them on another, like the final boss battle, to defeat them overall, right? And so in the long run, the players still win, but they do have that moment where they fail, right? And so there's this I don't know. The point is, sorry, I was getting a little lost in what I was talking about, but the point is that you can structure your whole campaign in a way that keeps the players motivated to stay on the main quest and or motivated to progress your campaign forward to get it to the point where it needs to, right? Because the players needed to get followers and or remove some of them before they felt any sort of progress to even have the war. And then based off of whether or not they win the war, then the next steps we're going to have to make to make up for such losses. Now, I don't know why I said, I don't know why I just talked for 10 minutes about that piece when I could have just said that, but that's just what happened, So there you have it. Those are my thoughts on railroading. It's been on my head for quite a bit. I think I'll probably have an actual discussion at some point with it, but hopefully you dig out some good information from there. And if not, then whatever, at least I can get my word vomit out onto, it's not even on paper, it's on a video. So really killing it with the analogies today. I can tell that my brain's burnt after blabbing for 45 minutes. So anyhow, hopefully this helps you. It certainly helps me to talk it out and internalize it. Get better as a DM, be better, learn to conquer chaos with your players. Get comfortable with conquering chaos. Not everything is going to turn out perfect ever, almost, right? But just as jazz never really feels clean, like perfect a lot of the times, it's the best thing that you can make at that time of it being made, which inherently makes it art and it makes it good. Whether or not that lands with some of the players or you may just have to you learn from that and you move on, but you are trying to make the best possible thing that you can, and you can only do that with your players. You need their input. You need their decisions. Don't puppy guard them. Don't puppeteer them. Just let them act and you react. Look at that. Dropping bars. So don't railroad. Stop it. Stop doing that. If you made it this far, heck, you might as well just come over, stay the night. But thanks for watching. Appreciate it. See you in the next one.